For 3 decades, humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. 30 years of diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange. 30 years of bending over backward to accommodate the whims and prejudices of 24 alien species. 30 years of swallowing their pride. Admiral James Wilson stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars with tired eyes. The ship was humanity's finest, a technological marvel that represented the pinnacle of human engineering, yet still dismissed by the Council races as quaint and primitive. "Admiral," Lieutenant Mark Reed approached with a datapad, "the Valkyrie delegation has cancelled the trade summit. Again." Wilson didn't react visibly. This was the 3rd cancellation in as many months. The Valkyrie, insectoid creatures with rigid exoskeletons and even more rigid cultural protocols, had been particularly difficult allies. Their reason this time? They claim our oxygen levels might contaminate their breathing apparatus. A flimsy excuse. The Valkyrie breathe the same nitrogen-oxygen mix as humans, just at slightly different concentrations. Wilson had spent millions of credits ensuring the summit station met their specifications exactly. "I see," Wilson said, keeping his voice level. "And the Nexaran request?" Reed's expression tightened. "They're demanding exclusive mining rights to the Tau Ceti system." "All of it, sir." "Tau Ceti? We have 3 colonies there." "Yes, sir. The Nexaran ambassador said humans can remain as custodial tenants." Wilson turned away so Reed wouldn't see the flash of anger in his eyes. The Nexarans, massive creatures, resembling Earth walruses with 6 limbs, had been steadily encroaching on human territory for years. Each time, humans negotiated, compromised, relocated, all to maintain peace. In the officers' mess later that evening, Wilson found Commander Anna Foster nursing a synthetic coffee, lost in thought. "Credit for your thoughts, Commander?" Wilson asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "Just reviewing the casualty reports from the Proxima incident," she replied. "Last week, a human research vessel had been destroyed by Drakari ships claiming the humans had violated their sacred space. 42 scientists dead. The Council had ruled it a regrettable misunderstanding, with no consequences for the Drakari. We submitted navigational data proving we were in international space," Wilson said. "Doesn't matter. The Council says the Drakari religious maps supersede our scientific charts." Foster's knuckles whitened around her cup. "My sister was on that vessel." Wilson reached across and placed his hand over hers. "I'm sorry, Anna. Do you know what the Drakari representative said to me when I demanded justice? He said humans should feel honored to have died for Drakari's spiritual enlightenment." Her voice trembled. "They're not even sorry, James." Before Wilson could respond, his comm unit buzzed. "Admiral, priority message from Earth Command." Wilson excused himself and retreated to his quarters. The holographic projection of Admiral Tara Hayes, Earth Fleet Commander, appeared before him. "James, the situation has escalated. The Krell have seized our outpost on Europa." Wilson felt ice in his veins. "Jupiter's Europa? In our own solar system?" Hayes nodded grimly. "They claim it falls within their aquatic expansion directive since Europa has a subsurface ocean. They've imprisoned the research team. 300 people. That's an act of war. The Council is calling it a territorial adjustment and has advised us to submit a formal complaint, which will be reviewed within the standard 5-year period." Wilson stared at her projection in disbelief. 5 years? The Council also recommended we abandon our other outer solar system outposts as a gesture of good faith. In that moment, something shifted in Wilson's core. A line had been crossed. The Krell hadn't just violated neutral space or distant colonies. They had reached into humanity's cradle, their home system. "What are our orders?" he asked quietly. Hayes's expression hardened. "The Security Council is meeting now. But unofficially? Prepare your fleet, James. Humanity's patience has limits, and those limits had finally been reached." The emergency session of Earth's Security Council had stretched into its 14th hour. Representatives from every major nation sat around the circular table, faces drawn and voices hoarse from endless debate. President Laura Morgan of the United Earth Government rubbed her temples. "Let me understand this correctly. The Krell have imprisoned our people, seized a human outpost within our own solar system, And the Galactic Council's response is, we should wait 5 years for a review? General Thomas Brock, a weathered veteran of the Mars independence conflicts, nodded grimly. Yes, Madam President. Furthermore, the Voth representative suggested this might be an opportunity for humans to learn appropriate deference to older species. Morgan's eyes narrowed. Deference? Their exact words, Brock confirmed. The Krell have been spacefaring for nearly 10,000 years. In their view, that gives them priority over newcomers like us. Dr. Robert Miller, chief xenoanthropologist, leaned forward. This is consistent with the hierarchical power structure the Council has always enforced. Species are informally ranked by their technological advancement and time as spacefaring civilizations. And where do humans fall in this hierarchy? Morgan asked, though she already knew the answer. Near the bottom, Miller said. Only the Tamai rank below us, and they achieved FTL travel just 15 years ago. The room fell silent as the implications settled in. For 30 years, humans had believed they were building toward equal partnership in the galactic community. Now, the truth was painfully clear. The Council races had never seen humanity as equals, and never would. What are our military options? Morgan finally asked. Defense Secretary Alan Wright activated a holographic display showing Earth's fleet. Positioning. Limited. The Krell ships around Europa outnumber our nearby forces 3-1. However, he manipulated the display, revealing dozens of blue dots scattered throughout the solar system. We've been quietly building our defensive capabilities. Project Bulwark has completed its first phase. Morgan studied the display carefully. Project Bulwark had been her predecessor's initiative, a classified program to develop autonomous defense platforms throughout Sol system, disguised as research stations and communications relays. Can we liberate Europa without Bulwark? Not without significant casualties, Wright admitted. But with Bulwark activated, we have a 78% chance of success with minimal losses. The diplomatic ramifications would be severe, cautioned Foreign Secretary Diana Ward. Using previously undisclosed military technology would be seen as deception by the Council. As opposed to the complete honesty they've shown us? Morgan countered, her patience wearing thin. How many times have we discovered Council races withholding technology from us? How many trade agreements have been designed to keep human advancement contained? Ward had no response to that. Just last year, humans had discovered the Nexorans had been deliberately selling them outdated medical technology while claiming it was cutting edge. There wasn't a single moment, Wilson replied thoughtfully. It was the culmination of many moments, countless small injustices, diplomatic slights, and violations of trust. Europa was simply the final drop in an already overflowing cup. He gestured toward Earth, visible through the viewport. What your people and others may not have understood is that humans value fairness above almost everything else. We can endure hardship, sacrifice, even danger. But persistent injustice eventually triggers something primal in us. Not just anger, but resolve. The young Valkyrie listened intently, mandibles clicking softly in what Wilson had learned was a sign of deep concentration. Our history is filled with examples, Wilson continued. Oppressed groups tolerating injustice for generations before finally standing up. Nations accepting diplomatic insults until a line is crossed. What looks like sudden action to outsiders is actually the endpoint of a long, internal struggle between patience and self-respect. The student's translator hummed as she responded. My instructor says that humanity's stance changed the galaxy more in 5 years than the previous 1,000 years of council rule. Wilson smiled slightly. Change was inevitable. We simply provided the catalyst. The summit chime sounded again, more insistent this time. Wilson excused himself and joined Reed at their table as President Morgan took the central podium. Representatives of all spacefaring civilizations, Morgan began, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. Today marks not just a new chapter in galactic relations, but a new book entirely. 5 years ago, when humanity declared it would no longer accept second-class status in the galaxy, we did not know where that path would lead. She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates, former enemies and new allies alike. Some predicted war. Others expected isolation. Instead, we found ourselves at the center of a galactic awakening. Species that had accepted their assigned places in the hierarchy for millennia began to question. Younger generations across a dozen worlds demanded to know why artificial distinctions of status should limit cooperation and progress. The Krell, delegate, Admiral Krellvor, nodded almost imperceptibly. His own rise to prominence had come after leading the reform movement within Krell society, arguing that strength should be measured not by dominance, but by adaptability and cooperation. Today, we sign the new Galactic Charter, Morgan continued, a document that recognizes the inherent equality of all intelligent species, regardless of how long they have traveled the stars or what technologies they have mastered. A document that establishes mechanisms for genuine cooperation rather than hierarchical control. From his seat, Wilson could see the mixture of emotions on the faces of the various delegates. Some of the older species, particularly the Voth, who had dominated the old council, still showed discomfort with the new order. Others, especially the younger species, displayed what Wilson had come to recognize as expressions of hope across different anatomies. The path here was not without cost, Morgan acknowledged, her tone somber. Lives were lost, relationships were strained, old certainties were shattered. But from this difficult transition comes opportunity. The opportunity to build a galactic community based on mutual respect rather than ancient privilege. As the president continued her address, Reed leaned close to Wilson and whispered, "The Nexaran Prime just sent word through back channels. They're prepared to formally apologize for the Tau Ceti claim and offer reparations to the displaced colonists." Wilson raised an eyebrow. "The Nexarans? I never thought I'd see the day." "Their new government recognizes that the old ways no longer serve anyone's interests," Reed explained. "Even species that benefited from the hierarchy are finding that cooperation yields better results than domination." As the summit proceeded, Wilson found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the humiliation of those early council meetings, where humans were treated as barely worthy of notice, to this moment, where humanity had helped reshape the very foundation of galactic relations. When the time came to sign the charter, Wilson watched as species after species affixed their signatures or biological equivalents to the document. Last came the Tamai representative, the youngest spacefaring species, whose hand trembled slightly as she signed, knowing that under this new order, her people would have the same voice as civilizations thousands of years their senior. Later, as the formal proceedings gave way to diplomatic receptions, Wilson found himself approached by an elderly Drakari, one he recognized as a former council arbiter who had often ruled against human interests. "Admiral Wilson," the Drakari said, his once vibrant feathers now faded with age, "I find myself compelled to speak with you." Wilson inclined his head respectfully. "Arbiter Craval, what can I do for you?" "You can accept an old being's admission of error," the Drakari replied, his voice carrying the melodic undertones characteristic of his species. "For centuries, I believed the hierarchy served the galaxy's best interests. That newer species needed guidance, control, restrictions." Wilson waited, sensing there was more. "I was wrong," the Arbiter continued simply. "The events of these past 5 years have demonstrated that progress comes not from control, but from freedom. Not from hierarchy, but from partnership." "That's an unexpected acknowledgement," Wilson admitted. The old Drakari's head crest rose slightly in what might have been amusement. "The universe is full of surprises, Admiral. Your species most of all." He gestured toward the chamber where delegates from 24 worlds mingled freely. "Look at what you've accomplished. Not through superior technology or military might, but through something much more powerful." "And what's that?" Wilson asked. "The ability to say enough, to draw a line and hold it, to demand respect not through aggression, but through principled resistance." The Arbiter's eyes, adapted for hunting on his homeworld, fixed on Wilson. No species will ever forget the moment humanity's tolerance finally snapped, because it changed everything. As Wilson looked around at the transformed galactic landscape, former enemies in conversation, newer species being heard, ancient rivals finding common ground, he realized the Arbiter was right. That moment at Europa when humanity had finally said enough had indeed changed everything. Not through conquest or domination, but by breaking the spell of an unjust order that had persisted for thousands of years simply because no one had challenged it forcefully enough. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity that day. Patience was not weakness, tolerance was not submission, and when pushed too far, the seemingly docile humans could become the catalysts for change that rippled across the stars, and no species would ever forget it. The end's something else to consider, interjected Admiral Hayes from her video feed. Internal intelligence suggests this Krell action wasn't spontaneous. We've intercepted communications indicating the Valkyrie and Drakari endorsed this move beforehand. You're suggesting a coordinated effort against us? Morgan asked. I'm suggesting a test, Madam President. They're testing our resolve, our willingness to defend ourselves. If we submit now, within our own solar system, it establishes a precedent. The President looked around the table, meeting each council member's eyes. I've heard enough debate. We've spent 30 years trying to be the perfect galactic citizens. We've followed their rules, accepted their judgments, even when they cost human lives. And where has it gotten us? Imprisoned citizens and enemies in our backyard. She stood, her decision made. Secretary Wright, authorize the activation of Project Bulwark. Admiral Hayes, dispatch the 3rd and 5th Fleets to rendezvous at Mars. General Brock, prepare our ground forces for a hostage rescue operation. And the Galactic Council? Ward asked quietly. Inform them that Earth is invoking Article 17 of the Charter, the right to self-defense against aggression. Tell them we expect the immediate withdrawal of all Krell forces from Sol system and the release of all human personnel. And if they refuse? Morgan's voice was steel. Then they'll discover that humanity's tolerance has limits, and those limits end at Europa. Europa's icy surface reflected the distant sunlight in shimmering patterns as the UES Defiant dropped out of FTL at the edge of Jupiter's orbital path. Admiral Wilson stood at the command center, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the tactical situation. 17 Krell vessels in defensive formation around Europa, reported Commander Foster. Their energy signatures suggest they've powered up weapons systems. Any response to our hails? Wilson asked. Nothing direct, communications officer, Lisa Patel replied. But we're intercepting significant chatter between the Krell commander and the Galactic Council. Put it through. The translated voice of the Krell commander, a guttural series of clicks and hisses, filled the bridge. Humans have no authority to challenge our presence. The waters beneath Europa's ice fall under Clause 12 of the Aquatic Resources Treaty. Council, we request immediate sanctions against Earth for this aggressive posture. The Council representative's response came through clearly. Human vessels are advised to stand down immediately. Your actions constitute a violation of Council peacekeeping protocols. The Krell operation on Europa has provisional authorization pending formal review. Wilson's jaw tightened. So the Council had known, perhaps even approved, the Krell invasion before it happened. Sir, Foster interrupted, 3rd and 5th Fleets have arrived at their holding positions. Project Bulwark platforms are awaiting activation codes. Wilson took a deep breath. The next few minutes would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Send the coded transmission to Earth Command. The line is drawn here. Moments later, President Morgan's authorization came through. Wilson addressed his fleet. All vessels, this is Admiral Wilson. For 30 years, humanity has extended its hand in friendship to the galactic community. Today, that community has shown its true colors by supporting an invasion of our home system and the imprisonment of our people. We have tried diplomacy. We have tried compromise. Now, we try strength, he nodded to Foster. Activate Bulwark. Throughout the Jupiter system, dozens of seemingly inactive satellites and research platforms suddenly came to life. Each one unfurled. Previously hidden weapon arrays and shield generators, revealing their true nature as advanced defensive platforms. Bulwark is online, Foster confirmed. Targeting systems locked on Krell vessels. On the main view screen, Wilson could see the confusion rippling through the Krell fleet as they detected the sudden appearance of numerous armed platforms. Open a channel to the Krell commander. When the connection was established, Wilson spoke, clearly. This is Admiral James Wilson of Earth Fleet. You have illegally seized a human outpost and imprisoned Earth citizens. You are hereby ordered to release all human personnel and withdraw from Europa immediately. The Krell commander's translated voice dripped with disdain. Humans do not give orders to Krell. Your primitive species should learn its place. I had a feeling you'd say that, Wilson replied calmly. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Target the smallest Krell vessel with bulwark platform 7. Single shot, minimum power. A beam of concentrated energy lanced out from one of the G platforms, striking a Krell frigate. The vessel's shields flared brilliantly before collapsing, and the ship itself shuddered from the impact. Silence filled the communication channel. The Krell had clearly not expected humans to possess such firepower. That was approximately 15% of one platform's capacity, Wilson continued conversationally. We have 36 platforms in this system alone. The next shot will not be at minimum power, and it will not target an unmanned vessel. Release our people. Withdraw from Europa. You have 10 minutes to comply. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before the Krell commander responded. This technology. It violates Council regulations on weapons development. Interesting point, Wilson replied. Did the Council mention that when they approved your invasion of our home system? 10 minutes, Commander. The clock is ticking. As the communication ended, Foster approached Wilson. Do you think they'll withdraw? Wilson watched the Krell vessels on the tactical display. The Krell respect strength above all else. Now they know we have it. 8 minutes later, the Krell began powering down their weapons and shields. Small shuttles departed from Europa's surface, heading toward the human fleet. They're releasing our people, Foster confirmed, relief evident in her voice. But Wilson's expression remained grave. This isn't over. The Council won't let this stand. We've just announced to the galaxy that humanity is done playing by rules designed to keep us submissive. What happens next, sir? Wilson looked at the holographic display of Earth, floating, serene and blue among the stars. Now we prepare for the real fight, because one thing is certain. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Station hummed with tension. Representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations sat in their designated areas, many whispering urgently to aides or conferring through neural links. At the center of the chamber, standing alone at the human podium, Ambassador David Reed waited as the Council Arbiter called the emergency session to order. This council convenes to address the human violation of galactic security protocols, announced Arbiter Klovac, a tall, gray-skinned Voth whose species had dominated council politics for centuries. Ambassador Reed, your government has deployed unauthorized weapons platforms in your solar system and threatened a Krell scientific expedition. How do you respond to these charges? Reed stood straight, his expression revealing nothing of the anger he felt. For 2 days, he had listened to Council species twist the narrative of what had happened at Europa, painting humans as the aggressors. Honored Arbiter, esteemed representatives, Reed began, his voice carrying through the chamber. I reject the premise of your charges entirely. The Krell did not conduct a scientific expedition. They launched an armed invasion of human sovereign territory, imprisoned Earth citizens, and claimed an Earth outpost for themselves. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Krell representative, a massive amphibian creature named Drokath, rose on his hind limbs. The humans deliberately mischaracterize our research initiative. Europa's underwater resources fall under Clause 12 of the Europa, Reed interrupted, causing gasps among the more protocol-obsessed species, is a moon of Jupiter, which orbits Sol, humanity's star. It has been part of human territory since before we joined this council. Your research initiative involved military vessels, weapons, and the imprisonment of 300 scientists. You forget your place, human, growled Drokath. No, Reed replied, his voice hardening. For 30 years, we have accepted council judgments that consistently favored established species over humanity. We have relocated colonies when you decided our presence was inconvenient. We have accepted trade, deals that benefited everyone but us. We have watched our citizens die at the hands of council species and been told to accept it as misunderstanding. He pulled up holographic evidence showing the Krell ships firing on the Europa outpost, the imprisonment of human scientists, and the communications between Krell Command and representatives from the Valkyrie and Drakari. You didn't just invade our territory, Reed continued. You conspired to do it. You tested our resolve, believing we would bow our heads again rather than defend our own solar system. The Arbiter banged his ceremonial staff. These allegations are serious and without foundation. The Council has always treated humanity fairly. Has it? Reed challenged. He activated another holographic display, showing 30 years of council decisions regarding human disputes. In 30 years and 147 major disputes involving humans, the council has ruled against humanity 139 times. Statistical analysis suggests a 94% bias against human interests. Your species' understanding of galactic politics is simplistic, the Valkyrie representative chittered. These rulings reflect the proper deference new species must show to established civilizations. Reed smiled thinly. Thank you for making my point so clearly. Proper deference. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not justice, not cooperation, but ensuring humanity knows its place at the bottom of your hierarchy. He walked around the podium, approaching the center of the chamber, a breach of protocol that sent ripples of shock through the council species. For 30 years, humans have tried to be good galactic citizens. We've followed your rules, respected your customs, compromised our interests, and in return, you've conspired to invade our home system. Reed's voice grew quieter, yet somehow more intense. That ends today. He activated a final holographic display, this one showing Project Bulwark's full scope. Not just the platforms around Jupiter, but similar defensive installations throughout Sol system and near every major human colony. Humanity formally withdraws from all unequal treaties imposed by this council. We will defend our territory, our citizens, and our right to exist as equals in this galaxy. Any further incursions into human space will be met with immediate military response. The chamber erupted in shouts and protests. The Arbiter pounded his staff repeatedly for order. This is unprecedented, roared the Nexaran representative. You cannot simply withdraw from council agreements. Watch us, Reed replied simply. For too long, we believed that patience would earn your respect. We were wrong. Respect, it seems, must be taken when it is not freely given. The Drakari representative rose, his feathered crest flaring in anger. This council could vote to impose sanctions, blockade Earth. You could try, Reed acknowledged. But ask yourselves this. How many of your worlds depend on human agricultural exports? How many use our medical innovations? How many would suffer if human trade suddenly stopped? An uncomfortable silence fell across the chamber as representatives exchanged glances. Despite their technological advantages, many council worlds had indeed grown dependent on human goods and services. This isn't a negotiation, Reed concluded. It's a notification. Humanity's tolerance has reached its limit. We remain open to relations based on mutual respect, but we will no longer accept second-class status. The choice is yours. With that, Reed turned and walked out of the council chamber, leaving stunned silence in his wake. 6 months after the Europa incident, as the media had dubbed it, the galaxy remained in turmoil. Some council species had attempted economic sanctions against human worlds, only to discover how deeply interconnected their economies had become with Earth's. Others had made military demonstrations near human territory, but the unveiled presence of bulwark platforms had kept these shows of force at a cautious distance. On the colony world of New Haven, Major John Bell watched from the observation deck as 3 massive transport ships descended through the atmosphere. Each carried thousands of human citizens evacuating from Nexaran-controlled space. Families who had lived there for generations but now faced increasing hostility. That's the last group from the Tau Ceti colonies, said Governor Helen White, standing beside him. Nearly 40,000 people uprooted because the Nexarans couldn't tolerate human neighbors after our stand at Europa. Bell nodded grimly. At least they're getting out safely. The Rigel evacuations didn't go as smoothly. Both fell silent, remembering the tense standoff 2 months ago when Drakari ships had attempted to prevent humans from leaving their territories. Only the timely arrival of Admiral Wilson's battle group had prevented bloodshed. Have you seen the latest transmissions from the independent worlds? White asked, changing the subject. The trade agreements? Yes. 7 non-council worlds have approached Earth for exclusive deals now that we're operating independently. Bell allowed himself a small smile. Turns out not everyone appreciated the Council's trade restrictions. The galaxy was realigning itself in ways no one had predicted. Smaller, non-council species that had also chafed under the established hierarchy were reaching out to humanity, seeing in Earth's defiance a potential ally against the old power structures. Meanwhile, on Earth, In the underground complex housing, the United Earth Government's Strategic Command Center, President Morgan reviewed the latest intelligence with her security team. The Valkyrie fleet movements near Proxima Centauri have increased, reported Intelligence Director Frank Miller. They're staying outside the boundary we established, but their presence is clearly meant as intimidation. And the diplomatic back channels? Morgan asked. Foreign Secretary Ward consulted her notes. Mixed responses. The Tamai have officially recognized our new independent status and proposed a mutual defense pact. The Nexarans and Krell remain hostile, but the Altari and Meknar have indicated willingness to establish bilateral relations outside Council oversight. The cracks are spreading, observed General Brock. The Council's unified front is failing. Morgan studied the galactic map hovering above the table. Human territories highlighted in blue, friendly species in green, hostile in red, and neutrals in yellow. The map had changed dramatically over the past half-year. What's most interesting, Miller added, are the internal communications we've intercepted from several Council worlds. There are growing movements among their populations questioning their government's hostility toward humans, particularly among younger generations who have had more contact with our culture. Secretary Wright pulled up several media feeds from across the galaxy. Alien news broadcasts, entertainment channels, information networks. In many of them, human cultural elements were prominently featured. They may not like our defiance, Wright explained. But our music, art, literature, films, they've penetrated deeper into galactic society than anyone realized. Humans are popular, especially among ordinary citizens. Popular but dangerous, Ward added. That's the narrative the Council leadership is pushing. That humans are an unpredictable, violent species that must be contained. Morgan considered this information thoughtfully. So there's a disconnect between the political stance of Council leadership and the attitudes of their general populations? Exactly, Miller confirmed. And that divide is growing wider as more information about what really happened at Europa spreads through independent networks. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication. Admiral Hayes's hologram appeared at the table. Madam President, we have a situation developing at Alpha Centauri. A Krell battle group has crossed the boundary line. The room fell silent. This was the moment they had been anticipating and dreading, the first direct military challenge to humanity's new stance. How many ships? Morgan asked. 7 capital ships, 15 support vessels. They're advancing toward our colony on Proxima B. Our forces in the system? The UES Defiant is already there with its battle group. 6 ships total, plus the bulwark platforms. Morgan turned to General Brock. Your assessment? The Krell are testing us again, Brock said firmly. They want to see if our resolve at Europa was a one-time occurrence, or if we truly mean to defend all our territory. Morgan nodded, having reached the same conclusion. Admiral Hayes, transmit to Admiral Wilson. Defensive Protocol Alpha is authorized. The Krell are to be warned once to withdraw. If they continue their advance... She paused, knowing the gravity of her next words. He has authorization to engage. As the transmission was sent, Morgan addressed her assembled advisors. This may be the day that determines humanity's future in the galaxy. If we back down now, everything we've stood for since Europa becomes empty words. If we fight, Brock finished for her, we show the galaxy that humanity's tolerance has not just snapped, it's been replaced by something the Council species have never seen from us before. What's that, General? Ward asked. Determination. The unshakable will to be treated as equals, or treat others as opponents. As the words hung in the air, they all turned their attention to the tactical display showing the Krell ships advancing toward the human colony. The moment of truth had arrived. The bridge of the UES Defiant thrummed with tense energy as Admiral Wilson watched the Krell battle group approach Proxima B. His officers worked their stations with practiced efficiency, but he could see the worry in their postures, the gravity of the moment weighing on them all. Krell vessels maintaining course, sir, reported Lieutenant Reed. They'll reach our orbital defense perimeter in 6 minutes. Wilson had already transmitted the warning as ordered. The Krell commander's response had been brief and dismissive. Human boundaries are not recognized by the Galactic Council. Stand aside or be removed. Status of the bulwark platforms? Wilson asked. Commander Foster looked up from her console. All 16 platforms are operational and tracking Krell vessels. Energy reserves at maximum. Wilson nodded. Unlike at Europa, where humanity had revealed only a fraction of their defensive capabilities, the Proxima system was fully protected. If the Krell continued their advance, blood would be spilled today. Sir? Communications Officer Patel interrupted. We're receiving a transmission. It's not from the Krell. Wilson frowned. Source? Multiple sources, sir. Ships dropping out of FTL at the edge of the system. The tactical display updated, showing new contacts appearing at the system's periphery. Wilson felt his heart sink as the signatures were identified. Valkyrie cruisers, Drakari destroyers, and Nexaran dreadnoughts. It's a coordinated attack, Foster whispered. The Krell were just the vanguard, but something wasn't adding up in Wilson's tactical assessment. The new arrivals weren't forming battle formations. They were maintaining position at the system's edge. Sir, Patel said, confusion evident in her voice. The Valkyrie commander is requesting to speak with you. So are the Drakari and Nexaran commanders. Wilson exchanged a puzzled glance with Foster before nodding. On screen, all of them. The view screen split into 3 sections, showing the alien commanders. The Valkyrie, an insectoid with iridescent chitin. The Drakari, avian with vibrant plumage. And the Nexaran, massive and walrus-like. Admiral Wilson, the Valkyrie commander began, her translator converting clicks and chirps to human speech. I am Commander Valkor of the Valkyrie Defense Force. We have monitored the Krell incursion into human territory. As have we, added the Drakari commander. I am Winglord Dreeken. The Drakari Ascendancy has observed Krell aggression with concern. Wilson kept his expression neutral despite his confusion. Your concern is noted, commanders. However, humanity is prepared to defend its territory without assistance. The Nexaran commander's deep, rumbling voice filled the bridge. We are not here to assist, Admiral. We are here to observe. Observe what, exactly? Wilson asked carefully. The consequences of Krell aggression, Valkor replied. The Council, majority voted against this action. The Krell act alone, against Council advisement. This was unexpected news. Wilson had assumed the Krell attack had Council backing, just as the Europa incident had. The political landscape has shifted, explained Winglord Dreeken. Your Ambassador Reed's words in the Council chamber have resonated with many worlds. Questions are being asked that have not been asked in centuries. Questions about the Council's structure, the Nexaran added. About the hierarchy that has gone unchallenged for millennia. Wilson began to understand. And so you're here to watch what happens when the Krell challenge humanity again. Yes, confirmed Valkor. To witness whether humans will defend their declared boundaries. And perhaps, to witness the consequences of misjudging a species that has been too long dismissed. The implications were enormous. These weren't reinforcements for the Krell. They were representatives of Council factions wanting to see if humanity would back its bold words with action. Before Wilson could respond further, Lieutenant Reed called out, Admiral, the Krell have crossed the defensive perimeter. They're powering weapon systems. Wilson made his decision instantly. All ships, battle stations, bulwark platforms, activate defensive protocols. Target Krell weapon systems and engines only. Disable, don't, destroy. The effect was immediate and devastating. 16 bulwark platforms unleashed precisely calculated energy beams, striking the Krell vessels with surgical accuracy. Weapons arrays exploded, engine nacelles shattered, and shield generators failed across the Krell fleet. In less than 30 seconds, the mighty Krell battle group was reduced to drifting, powerless hulks. No casualties detected on Krell vessels, Foster reported with evident relief. Their life support systems remain intact. Wilson stood from his command chair, addressing the alien commanders still watching from the view screen. Commanders, you have witnessed humanity's response. We defended our territory with precisely the force necessary. No more, no less. The Krell crew will be rescued and returned to their people unharmed. The 3 commanders exchanged glances through their respective screens. Most enlightening, the Nexaran rumbled. Strength tempered with restraint. Not the actions of barbarians, as some in the Council have claimed. Indeed, Winglord Dreeken agreed. The Drakari Ascendancy will be reassessing its position. regarding humanity. Valkor of the Valkyrie simply inclined her head in what might have been respect. We have seen what we came to see, Admiral Wilson. The galaxy watches you now. All of you. As the transmissions ended and the alien vessels began to withdraw from the system, Foster approached Wilson. Sir, do you realize what just happened? Wilson nodded slowly, the full implications dawning on him. The galactic order is shifting, Commander. For thousands of years, the Council species have maintained their hierarchy unchallenged. Now they've seen what happens when they push humanity too far. Do you think there will be war? She asked quietly. Wilson looked at the disabled Krell ships on the view screen. No, I think there will be change. And change is often more terrifying than war to those who have held power unchallenged. He turned to his communications officer. Contact Earth Command. Tell them what happened here today wasn't just a military victory. It was a demonstration, one that may have just rewritten humanity's place in the galactic order. 5 years after the Europa incident, the Galactic Summit convened on neutral ground, the lunar city of Armstrong Base. For the first time in recorded galactic history, representatives from all spacefaring species met not in the hierarchical arrangement of the council chamber, but seated as equals around a circular table. Admiral Wilson, now retired from active service and serving as Earth's defense advisor, stood by a viewport overlooking the magnificent blue sphere of Earth. Beside him, Ambassador Reed watched delegates arriving in the main chamber. Did you ever imagine we'd see this day? Reed asked quietly. Wilson shook his head. Never. Not in my lifetime. The years following the Proxima confrontation had seen tumultuous change throughout the galaxy. The Krell defeat had been the catalyst for a cascade of political upheavals. On numerous council worlds, younger generations had demanded accountability from their leaders, questioning the age-old hierarchies that had governed galactic relations. The Galactic Council itself had splintered, then reformed under a new charter, one that explicitly rejected the concept of species ranking based on technological advancement or time as spacefaring civilizations. President Morgan has arrived, Reed noted as Earth's leader entered the chamber accompanied by her security detail. The opening address begins in 20 minutes. Wilson nodded absently, his attention caught by a Krell delegation entering the summit hall. Is that who I think it is? Reed followed his gaze and smiled slightly. Yes, Admiral Krellvor. The same commander whose ships you disabled at Proxima. He specifically requested to be part of their diplomatic team. For revenge? Quite the opposite, according to our intelligence. He's become one of the strongest advocates for the new galactic order within Krell society. He witnessed firsthand both our strength and our mercy. Wilson watched the massive amphibian moving through the crowd, occasionally stopping to converse with delegates from other species, even exchanging what appeared to be a respectful greeting with a human diplomat. The Tamai delegation looks nervous, Wilson observed, nodding toward a group of diminutive, blue-skinned humanoids who had been spacefaring for even less time than humans. They have reason to be excited, Reed replied. Under the old council, they might have waited centuries to have their voices truly heard. Now, they'll help shape the new galactic charter as full partners. A soft chime announced the imminent start of the summit. Delegates began taking their seats. Humans alongside Valkyrie, Drakari next to Nexarans, Krell beside Tamai. Ancient enemies, and new allies, predator species and prey species, all gathered as equals. As Wilson and Reed made their way to their assigned positions, they passed a group of young aliens, students from various worlds who had been selected to observe this historic gathering. One of them, a young Valkyrie whose chitin still bore the iridescent sheen of adolescence, approached Wilson hesitantly. Admiral Wilson? The young Valkyrie asked, translator converting her clicks into smooth English. I'm studying human history at the Galactic Academy. May I ask you a question? Wilson nodded, somewhat surprised. Of course. In my research, I found that humans have a capacity for both tremendous patience and sudden, decisive action. For 30 years, your species endured treatment that many would consider unjust. Then in a single moment at Europa, everything changed. The student's compound eyes gleamed with curiosity. How did you know when that moment had arrived? How did humanity recognize when tolerance had reached its limit? Wilson considered the question carefully. It was insightful, more so than the young alien might realize.